executive director, starts on Monday, and I wanted to make sure there was a continuation of information so that she understood what was discussed today. But also, if there's people within your organization that you want to share this conversation with, please feel free to share that. I will post it on our YouTube channel and send you the link so that you have a copy of this, and hopefully the feedback that we're getting won't be recorded. So if everybody just wants to say hi to Hannah, who will be listening to this.
Hi.
Hi, Hannah.
Great. Good. Well, and I cut out the Halloween costume bit, so maybe I should have included that in the recording. We're just going to go around and introductions. Let's start, see if we can do this, start north and go south. So that means we'll be starting with Michelle. If everyone could just say their name, their organization, and anything you're already doing pertaining to everyday mentoring or informal mentoring. And I think everybody's a little bit familiar because I've had a conversation with everybody about this, but if you could talk a little bit about what you're already doing in that area, if you are doing anything in that area. So Michelle, are you on the call? I see Michelle's name there. All right, Michelle, we'll skip down to, I don't know who's south of you, but I'm going to guess it's Seth.
I was hoping to have an example to go through first. Seth Ehrlich, Executive Director of SOS Outreach. What are we doing in everyday mentoring? We certainly see a lot of work with our mentors as we have strengthened our training, and that they're giving us feedback on how it's strengthening the relationships that they're having in workplace or with personal connections. And so it's been an indirect as a result of the step up that we've provided in our skill set and capacity with our mentoring training.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Seth. And can we get everybody to mute their lines? It's a little telephone green button, and maybe that'll help with our feedback a little bit. So if you can press mute on your line. Oh, actually, that does sound better. Okay. All right, Michelle, do you want to go? Name, organization, and if you've done anything related to everyday mentoring? Okay, I can see Michelle can type, but we still are not hearing Michelle. Let's move on to Frisco.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. So it's Lauren from Summit County Mountain Mentors. I believe Robin, our director, is on the call as well, or just going to jump in. So in addition to training all of our mentors that come in on about a monthly basis, it's a rolling intake. We have actually the cycle effect from Edwards has Eagle, we'll call it Eagle County. They have reached out for the last 2 years. We have trained their coaches to be mentors because they wanted to shift from coaches competitively to mentoring. So it just goes to show that there is that need in the community, especially among coaches. We've been approached by a couple other private ski clubs in the county as well, Method Academy and Team Summit, coaches that are just missing the social emotional piece, connecting with their athletes. And then myself has just, and another coworker just got trained in PYD, so we are ready to deliver the positive youth development training for adults that work with and around youth. And then we also had a SDS social development strategy training to implement the SOAR curriculum, which is skills, opportunities, and recognition. So between PYD and SOAR training, we have an 8-hour training and a 50-minute training to essentially provide to our community to be those mentors. And then tomorrow night, along with CDPHE, we are providing the Askable Adult workshop to our Summit Middle School and presenting the Healthy Kids Colorado survey data as well, pairing that data with how to be an askable or approachable adult. So that's what we're doing.
Great. And I know a lot of people on the line already know Shauna, who is still on maternity leave until, when is she back, Lauren?
I believe next week, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so she'll be back next week. But great to have you and Robin on the line.
Yep, thanks.
Let's go to Chaffey County.
Hey, Kirsten Love here with Chaffey County Mentors. We are under Family and Youth Initiatives umbrella. I also did just get to go to the PYD Train the Trainer. But what I was going to say about using everyday mentoring or informal mentoring, that is part of my actual recruitment speech. When I talk to people about becoming an official mentor through our program, I talk about how there used to be informal mentoring before families were so transient, and when kids more stayed in the same neighborhood, and perhaps the person down the street noticed the kid was always interested when he was working on his truck, and that became a natural informal, like natural mentoring. So I always use that as kind of a recruitment technique to point out that this mentoring thing isn't anything new, and it doesn't have to be a laser light show. It really is something that has happened for eons every day naturally.
Great. Thanks, Kristen. And let's go down to Gunnison.
Great. Hi, everybody. Tina McGinnis, Executive Director, Gunnison Valley Mentors. We're doing a couple of things that we think are related to everyday mentoring. Our community as a whole identified the need for more positive adult connections and trusted adults in kids' lives about a year ago. So the community has actually adopted this as sort of an initiative, and they ask us to develop a trusted adult guide. And so we developed a guide, and we've been making presentations to school groups. And so it's not exactly training on how to become an everyday mentor, but it is definitely the trusted adult piece in developing relationships with kiddos. And then the other thing that we started doing with our formal intentional mentors is that one of the goals of every partnership is each kiddo at the end of the year that they spend with their formal mentor will be able to identify 3 additional adults in the community that they've been able to get to know through activities that were initiated by their formal mentor. So when they move out of a formal mentoring relationship, they have at least 3 additional positive adults they can connect to in the community. So we're trying to help kids identify those mentors themselves. And so it ties in really well with youth-initiated mentoring too.
Great. Thanks, Tina. I'm excited to see the guide when you guys are done.
Okay.
Michelle, are you able to get online or audio?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me yet? Oh, you can? All right. I think I just didn't have the microphone plugged in. So Michelle with Partners in Broward County, and I would say our big thing a year ago was starting to do some free trainings on the elements for any of the youth organizations that were interested. We kind of did a lunch and learn series, and it was a brief overview. We also really were pushing for people to go in our community, again, who worked with youth or identified as mentoring type programs, to go to the summit. So we had pretty good response from the lunch and learns, doing the overview of the elements. And then from that, we were invited to do some trainings with the local high school sports coaches. So we did the fall, and we actually missed the winter one because the guy gave us the wrong date, but he did have our handout stuff that he gave them, and then we will be going to do the spring coaches.
Great.
One last thing I'll say is I really love how at the summit, Gene Rhodes spoke about Stock the Pond, and we've kind of been using that as our initiative. And when it comes to those who already work with youth, especially coaches, we've been calling it Feed the Fish, because they're already in there. They just maybe need some more of those, like Tina was saying, the social emotional, those tools.
Hey, you got the really good tagline, Michelle.
Yeah, that's my
I
creative.
think you're the one who came up with the carabiner for us, and I think you were the one who also mentioned that if it takes a village, everyday mentoring is training those villagers to raise the child or support the child. So we're definitely going to get Michelle involved in some of our marketing communications. So thanks, Michelle.
Cool.
So we're going to talk a little bit about everyday mentoring as a potential collaborative grant opportunity for all of us. This call is really, and maybe we can get people to mute their phones again, just so we're getting a little bit of feedback there. Perfect. So we're going to use this call as an opportunity to kind of explore the option of working on a collaborative grant. We've talked to El Pomar. I think I've told everybody about that conversation already. But essentially, they seem interested in supporting this type of initiative. And I think even if El Pomar is not interested or decides not to fund us, that there are other funders out there that might be interested in this. And we believe, it could also have a great impact. I'm just going to do a quick overview of what we're talking about when we refer to everyday mentoring, so that we're all on the same page. Because I know when people talked about their different initiatives, everyone had a little bit of different way that they're doing it. And I think that's the great thing about everyday mentoring is it is fairly open-ended and can look different in different communities. But just so that we're all talking in the same term, we look at traditional mentoring as infusing a positive adult or older peer into the life of a young person, where the everyday mentoring in opposition to that is identifying someone who's already standing up in the life of a young person and inspiring, training, and supporting them to be mentors. So looking at their coaches, at their schools. For Mentor Colorado, and it's great that people are already having these conversations, and I can't remember who said it on the phone, it's nothing new. It's been happening for centuries. For Mentor Colorado, we've interacted with other state partnerships that are really pursuing this. And in Massachusetts, they're working with corporations to support them on how do you provide mentoring opportunities for high school students who are coming in as interns, or even college students, or even people in their first job. How do you mentor them? So it's not just an opportunity for them to get work experience, but it's also a mentoring opportunity. Other states, they're training police officers, they're training coaches, they're training teachers, they're training after-school workers in everyday mentoring. The one consistent thing that we're seeing is that most of these other states are using Search Institute's developmental relationships framework to kind of organize their thinking around everyday mentoring and building relationships with young people. We also have seen a number of other social emotional trainings. I think Mountain Mentors mentioned that they're doing one out there that also provides that support that a number of people are doing. With the everyday mentoring, why Mentor Colorado is pursuing this approach? Because there's the need for mentors. So 1 in 3 young people are saying, I don't have a mentor. When you look at the people who are saying they have a mentor, this is based on Mentors research. It's also based on Putnam. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Our kids, what he said in his book. And it's also fairly consistent with what we have in Colorado when we look at mentored youth. If there's 600,000 young people in Colorado that are being mentored, when we look at formalized mentoring programs, our 65 plus affiliates, we're reaching about 20,000 young people through formalized mentoring programs, which is, above 5%, but it's not that far off. So what they're finding is when kids are being mentored, 5% of it comes from formalized mentoring, and the other 95% comes from everyday mentoring. So when we look at this 300,000, this orange piece of the pie that says these kids don't have a mentor, it is hard for us to imagine a world where we could provide 300,000 kids with formalized traditional one-to-one community-based mentoring. And people could argue, does every one of those 300,000 kids need that type of program? We also have group, team, peer mentoring. But also, what role does that everyday mentoring play in reaching those 300,000 kids? So the need for significantly more mentors, the initial success that we've had being contracted by Denver Police, a couple of the ski resorts, some schools that have used their technical assistance for everyday mentoring, our inability to scale formalized mentoring, and the advantages of engaging diverse and local community mentors in mentoring. I know I don't know if it's a problem in rural communities, but I know in Denver, we often hear mentoring agencies saying that it's really hard for them to recruit males as well as people from diverse backgrounds. The research that supports an informal everyday mentoring approach, and that's mainly referring to the Search Institute, but also what Putnam says in his book, Our Kids. And then creating additional tools for mentoring agencies to recruit mentors, generate revenue, and position themselves as leaders in relationship building in their communities. So for us, that's Mentor Colorado's motivation for exploring this initiative. I just wanted to make sure we were putting that out on the table and that everyone was aware where we're coming from, Mentor Colorado. If at any point you have questions, feel free to jump in. We don't have to wait till the end if people want to ask things or comment on different items that are brought up. So basically today we're going to go through the program, the initial concept. We'll talk a little bit about how this program aligns with behavior change. We'll talk about a timeline, and we'll talk about a potential grant opportunity with Alpamar. And then I've got some questions at the end that I was hoping to ask people around next steps. But essentially, the program pieces, and I think, you know, if we decide to develop a collaborative grant, we would want the expertise of the people on the phone in your organizations to weigh in on this, and to modify and adjust it and to tweak it and make sure it really is aligned with your needs, but also it's following best practices in program design. So really, with the program design piece, figuring out how do we get different voices involved, identifying what already exists in everyday mentoring or informal mentoring, what initiatives, what resources, solidifying a workshop, whether it's 2 or 4 hours of what we think will be best, solidifying the behavior change model that we're looking for the mentors that we're training, creating a 3-month follow-up plan, and this really is based on behavior change and most of the theory saying that it takes at least 3 months for people in order to change their behavior and to maintain it. Develop structure for the ongoing coaching and support, solidify the program process and evaluation tools, and the last one is the marketing communications piece. And I kind of put who would be responsible for those things, MC meaning Mentor Colorado. The community engagement piece is identifying those partners in your community, whether they're school districts or police officers. What we wanted to get away from in this initiative, and happy to, you know, if we move forward with this to debate it, but we really wanted sustainable structures. And that if we were training police officers or we were training coaches, that we were also training the coaching association and we were working with the coaching association, or if we were training teachers, we were working with the school or the school district, so that we were creating more sustainable structures for this type of initiative. And then identifying the actual mentors. You know, I knew 10 everyday mentors was too low, and I knew 10,000 was too many. So what the right number is for each mentoring agency to train, and depends on the grant and all of that. I think, again, that's another thing that would be up for debate, and we'd really want to lean on mentoring agencies to provide that input on what is realistic, and the same with the number of partners. You know, once the community engagement, we've got the program designed, the community engaged, we'd look at how to, the capacity piece, capacity building piece, and doing a train the trainer, and even potentially certifying mentoring agencies and saying you are certified in everyday mentoring, hoping that that will give some recognition within your community, and that when, you know, a ski resort says, well, I find sometimes people think you have to be 100 miles away in order to provide a valid training. And so they know that you have been a part of this initiative, that you are certified, that you've gone through all the research. And I don't know if that will help in your community, but if it is, great. And if it's not, then we can nix that. But and then participation in the workshop. So those are the first 3 phases of the program. The next 3 are really the ongoing coaching and support. We have the technical assistance grant that we can use and contract mentoring agencies, your organizations, to provide ongoing coaching and support to the police department, to the school district, to the school. But also a distribution of video vignettes and key messages over a 3-month period. I know in other states they have automated systems all set up to send SMS reminders to mentors, to send out regular email reminders. I think part of the program design is figuring out what are the key messages that we want to keep to send to people. What are the videos? What are the video vignettes and when I say vignettes, it's just like 30-second videos that we want to make sure that we're supporting, inspiring, as well as educating those mentors. And some of them can be one or more of those things. And then really around the program evaluation piece, we always use Fitzpatrick's model for program evaluation in terms of capacity building, measuring the reaction, learning, implementation, change, and potentially even going a step further in return on investment. But the program would then distribute reflective evaluation forms to the mentees. So we were picturing for this initiative, if we're training a mentor on everyday mentoring and providing ongoing support, that they would be able to reach at least 2 young people. And it would be with varying degrees of support. And we would want to capture that in evaluation forms. What's the frequency and duration? What's the type of support that they're providing as everyday mentors? And then what are the outcomes? What's the change that these young people are experiencing? And then really the last step, knowing that this is a new program for everybody involved, including Mentor Colorado, is just really understand what's happening throughout the program and how do we make sure we're learning from it, improving on it as we go along. The program outcomes associated with the young people, I think it's really a bit of a question mark. Like a lot of organizations are measuring increase in adult bonding, and I think that one's the easy one to say. But what else is going to be measured in this? Knowing that, you know, the touch of a coach or police officer might be different than a teacher or a youth after school worker. What can we anticipate? What does the research say? And I think it's interesting for us to dive deeper into that, talk to a few of the key researchers who are looking at everyday mentoring and trying to understand what is appropriate for us to measure and to expect. And I think it's very valuable for funders to understand that the one-to-one community-based mentoring program is a high-impact program. And the everyday mentoring program, you cannot expect the same result because you don't have as much control over the mentors and the frequency and the duration and the type of interactions that they're going to be having. Does anyone have any questions before we go into beyond this program, the 6
Hi, Brad.
phases?
It's Robin from Summit County. So we're, I'm wondering if we can't compare, I don't know if every community involved in this collaborative is involved with the Healthy Kids Colorado survey, but there is an adult, a question asking if you have a trusted adult you can talk to, and it might be interesting to look at like 17 results to, you know, whatever year we do a year of these trainings, if we see an impact on that question on the Healthy Kids Colorado survey.
Yeah, like I think if we're training enough mentors and working with a specific school or focusing on adults that might be interacting with kids in a specific school, or if we can get the individual results from the Healthy Kids Colorado survey, I'm not sure how that all works. But yeah, I think using secondary data is always a better option. Great point. Thanks, Robin. And even their language, because I know we talked to, I can't remember who runs it, and asked them to potentially consider some language that we wanted to promote in the Healthy Kids Colorado survey so we can continue that conversation with them. You know, for us, it is looking at behavior change with the mentors, the people who are already interacting with young people, and saying, how can we make their interactions with young people more intentional in relationship building? And so really making them aware of how do you be more intentional, getting them to believe, inspiring them, supporting them to say, yes, I can play this supportive role in a young person's life, getting them to practice it, maintain it, and then eventually being an advocate for this and encouraging others to play this same role and participate in the training and support system. So, you know, I don't know what behavior change theory people use, if they use any, but it's really looking at how do we support, what are we looking at in terms of the barriers for everyday mentors, and how do we overcome those barriers that they might be experiencing within that role. In terms of timeline, this is a rough timeline because it really depends on, obviously, on funding, but given El Kumar and what they've said, if we were to move forward and organizations were interested in participating, we would look at doing program design potentially over a 3-month period, March, April, May. I try to estimate, I'm terrible at this, so hopefully as we get more people involved, they'll be better at this. I tried to estimate how much time would it take Mentor Colorado or mentoring agencies to participate in each phase. And this is per mentoring agency. So 25 hours, if there's 4 organizations that are interested, that's 100 hours. We would just want to make sure that each agency was weighing in on the program design and that Mentor Colorado could take the lead in the development, but constantly getting input and feedback from mentoring agencies on what works, what doesn't work, how should this look, how shouldn't this look. So that's the program design. We were imagining the community engagement piece. You know, once the grant's approved, that you can start talking to schools and partners about, is this a good fit for you? Here's what we're thinking. In May, we'll have some materials to share with you. And it really is a mentoring agency building those relationships in their community. And hopefully you already have a lot of those relationships. It's just solidifying them. The capacity building, we were thinking that if people wanted this to work with schools, that the capacity building would have to start in August and potentially go up into October. And especially also if it's with coaches, a lot of the leagues and seasons start around the same time. So that could be good timing. You know, the hours allocated, it just depends on how long our training is as well. And we're hoping that we can create some efficiencies there and allow people to streamline the development implementation of those trainings. The program coaching and support, we envision that to be a 3-month endeavor, with Mentor Colorado doing a lot of the systems background, where the automated messages or videos where you're sending us their contact information, it's just being automated for them. So everybody doesn't have to create their own automated system, but that you're providing the ongoing in-person support. So if somebody is looking for coaching sessions, that you have that opportunity. The program evaluation piece, and revising the pilot. So when you add up all the hours for Mentor Colorado, it's essentially 8 weeks of time. And for each mentoring agency, it's 4 weeks of time. I know I've talked to a few of you on the phone about staffing structure, and do you have a staff member that could carve out 4 weeks, or are you just adding on time that, you know, they don't have? And so we would want to make sure, you know, if organizations were interested in this type of initiative, that you had a staffing structure that allowed this support to be provided. You know, I think it's hard to guess how much time it would be. So we would want people to, you know, be able to carve out at least 4 weeks to make sure that they're able to participate. And again, it would be over the course of a year, those 4 weeks of time. In terms of the grant, you know, for us, if we were to move forward and get this out, and I just wrote Matt Carpenter at El Pomar today and said, when's the last possible day we could apply for them to consider us in February? I'm hoping he says January 20th or a later date than that. But if he's sticking with the initial December 31st, you need to get it in this year. This is the timeline that I created, is that we need to confirm who wants to be involved in this initiative, probably by November 28th. Solidify the program components and program timeline by December 10th. I think what we'd like to do is write into the grant that the first phase of program design is part of that. But, you know, for the purpose of the grant application, is solidifying as much as we can, solidifying the budget within a week after we create the program, writing the grant, which would be Mentor Colorado or a grant writer, and then reviewing the grant, having agencies. And I know everyone's probably looking at this time going, Brad, you're leaving in a week. This is probably why you're making us work over the holidays. But, you know, I'm really hoping Matt will say January 20th so we can push all these dates out, and then submit the application by the 31st. So my questions were, for everyone on the phone, what additional information do you need to make a decision on participation in this grant, in this program? Are there any major changes that you saw that I just outlined and you said, wow, this is huge, we got to change this. This is not going to work at all, related to the program timeline, the grant timeline of the program? And then I just love to know from people on a scale of 1 to 10 how excited you are about this initiative and how interested you are in trying to figure this out. So maybe we can start off with the first question. What additional information would you need in order to make a decision on this?
Well, this is Tina, Brad, and I think really I would need to ensure that I would have the staffing capacity to take it on, and so that would have to be part of the proposal, is that we would be able to have a person to do it.
Yeah, and in terms of budget, like we would want to make sure all those hours were covered. And I don't know if that's $50 an hour, and we're making sure that, you know, you have we're budgeting time for you and, you know, some of your overhead. But we would want to make sure that the grant is paying for somebody's time to participate. Now, I'm guessing for you, you'd want to, are you saying would the grant cover a staff member's time, or are you saying do we actually have a staff member to participate?
Well, I guess either one of those things. If there's funding to cover somebody's time, that's very helpful, because then we could find a person to do it.
And I think that's when we request the grant. To me, when we go through the budget, the bulk of the budget would have to go to covering Mentor Colorado's time and mentoring agencies' time for participation in this initiative.
And then my other question, and I know we talked about this a tiny bit, but if we're already receiving funding from El Pomar, we didn't want that to, you know, reflect from El Pomar's standpoint that they're already funding us and that they might not be interested in funding us for a different mentoring initiative if they're already funding us for our program.
Yep. And so when I talked to Matt, he said, I don't think the trustees will view it that way. And I said, can we put a caveat or put something with our grant to say, if this reduces the ask of a mentoring agency or eliminates the ask of a mentoring agency, to not involve them in this collaborative grant.
Okay.
And so Hannah's going to be meeting with Matt in December, and I've already confirmed that with him, and so hopefully I'll get her to confirm that again, because I think hearing it multiple times will help, because we don't want anyone to lose out on other funding or funding they're already getting from El Pomar because they're participating in this collaborative.
Okay, thanks.
Does anyone need any other information before they're able to make a decision on this? And not that you don't need to, go back and talk this with your staff and see if you can make this work, but is there anything else Mentor Colorado should provide or could provide to you that will help you to decide? Great. So I'm assuming everyone's got the information they need. Any major changes that when you looked at the program, you just thought this is not going to work for us unless we change this?
Well, this is Kirsten over in Chaffee County. Identify 125 everyday mentors. That number might be a little steep for my county of only 40,000.
Great. So yeah, we can read
17,000. That's my whole
Sorry,
count.
can you repeat?
So that
Sorry, can you
number,
repeat that again?
the number of 125 everyday mentors might be a little steep for my tiny county.
Yeah, what do you think would be more realistic?
I don't rightly know. I feel like I scrimp and scrape just to hold 35 regular mentors, and I know that the whole idea is to get more out there, which is why I love this idea. I'm super excited about this program, but seeing that number kind of makes me go, gulp, that's big.
Yeah, and what we could do is look at each community and say, well, what if we took an individualized approach? And each community kind of picked their number and came to the table and said, this is what we think is realistic, and either create an average out of that or create the grant application with different numbers for different communities. Well, something for us to consider, but yeah.
Is there anyone else out there that saw the number of 125 and thought, oh boy, that's a lot of people to get on board?
Lauren from Summit. So I think it kind of depends on the evaluation. So I think we could get 125 people into a training. It's how do we follow up and what sort of criteria are they meeting to be a mentor? Does that make sense? Like we'll get them trained, but is it like, are they meeting a certain requirement of contact hours or communication, follow up, 3 months, 6 months? It depends on the evaluation, if you can speak to that.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're looking to tap into some best practices. If there is research on everyday mentoring that indicates the frequency and duration that should be followed, then that would be the recommendations. I haven't seen anything yet, but that's not to say that there isn't something out there. And I think in terms of the support, it would be, I think the sending out the messages and the videos and that would be our more proactive approach. But it would be really waiting for people to reach out and say, I'm having this trouble or I have these questions, and we'd be taking a reactive approach. And I guess too, there's a lot of unknowns here in that we just don't know how many people will reach out, given your mentors that are your training, and probably you'll have a much closer relationship with them than you would with the everyday mentors. But knowing the amount of time you're providing and coaching and support to them, it'd be great for people to provide us with information on what does that look like. On average, if you have 10 mentors, how much time do you spend answering questions, providing coaching support, knowing this isn't a one-to-one community impact, and in a way we are training, supporting, and then letting go, and there is a lot less control in this type of program model. I wish I could give closer estimates on that, and I don't know if anyone on the phone has any thoughts on that.
So I guess I would say 125 is on the steeper end, but we could get 100. I would hope that we could get around that, or about 100 into our trainings. But yeah, if there's obviously if we're evaluating the program, we want follow up. So I don't think. I assume that there's going to be some sort of concern with retention, as there is in, most mentoring programs. But I don't know what it looks like to complete as a everyday mentor to complete the program. 125 seems steep in my community to retain.
And I think I too would need to know what the program design is before I could commit to any number of everyday mentors we may be able to train.
Well, would we be able to commit to this group deciding that number? So I don't think it should come from Mentor Colorado, that number. I think it should come from the group, and whether it is individual to each community or not. And I think the challenge is it's a bit of a chicken and an egg thing. Do we invest in getting the group together to try and design the program? Not until the program's designed, it really is hard to say the number because we don't know how intensive this is going to be. We know that we just don't want it to be a one-off training, but how much more support is being provided? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think it's what's right for this group. And that's why I think it really should come to this group. So if people are interested in moving forward, I think as long as you're comfortable saying we get a say in the number, and if we don't like the number that's come up with for some reason from the rest of the group, we're Mentor Colorado is okay if people say that we can't do that based on our community and our capacity.
Sounds good.
That seem reason? Okay, good.
Yep, that's perfect answer. Thank you, Brad.
Good, and I know too, like Hannah's going to be leading this process, and I think, her being new, she's really going to lean on the people on this call to make a lot of the decisions. And the people on this call and the people in your organizations are really the experts on mentoring. And what Mentor Colorado is hoping to bring to the table is the research on everyday mentoring and saying, here's what the research is saying. And you're bringing to the table, well, here's what's best for our community and what we know in terms of practice from what's happening on the ground. And so I'm hoping that combination provides a really great program design that allows us to pull something meaningful together. Thanks, Kristen, for bringing that up. Any other major concerns or major changes that you need to see with the program, or even minor changes that you want to bring up?
I would just say that having worked specifically with coaches versus maybe other groups, I just think as we design the trainer program, I think it'd be good to have that focus. You know, watching Drew come and do a training for our winter sports club, I could see where, one, I think it was what you were talking about as far as somebody from outside the community, but two, there was this sense of, oh, he was a coach for lacrosse, you know, at that level. So I just think having some of our target audience in mind is going to be important for it to be impactful.
Great, yeah. So do we need modifications for teachers or coaches or?
And I know Hannah's going to bring that, right, with the coaching, with the soccer piece. So I kind of already thought of that. But I do, again, like you just started mentioning, teachers. And, you know, we actually had somebody who came to our training from the church. And, you know, that was a great conversation, you know, as she was trying to figure out how is this fitting with our belief system. It might be just
interesting.
Questions. Sorry, I was just going to say it might even just be coming up with questions that they should be asking themselves as they bring this information to their place of mentoring. You know, whether it's a field, a classroom, whatever.
Yeah, and another interesting concept is to look at who are the contacts or who's going to be doing this within each organization and what's their background and expertise. If we have somebody en route who's got an education background and somebody at SOS who has a coaching background, well, maybe SOS is comes up and helps with their coach training to co-facilitate, and maybe the education person goes down to Avon and helps SOS with the training for teachers. So it's interesting how we could share resources within the network and how we could send it different expertise. Thanks, Michelle. Any other thoughts or comments? So last question on a scale of 1 to 10.
So Brad, on this for implementation side, grant comes through. We get grant funding potentially to cover staff costs associated with it. What's the long-term vision of how this fits and how it continues moving forward?
So I think
are you projecting this as a potential revenue model for organizations who get involved, where you start charging for training that we're offering in the community? Is it a continued reliance on the foundation to provide support? But how does this fit in that long-term perspective?
Yeah, and I think for us, we're excited for mentoring agencies to decide themselves. And I can tell you from Mentor Colorado's perspective, what we would love to have is mentoring agencies that are able to generate revenue from this to cover their costs or cover more than their costs. We'd also love mentoring agencies to have something else that they can get grants for. And I think some of the challenge that organizations are getting in the one-to-one or team or group mentoring is there's a high cost per child. And by coupling sometimes everyday mentoring initiatives with your one-to-one community-based grants, allows you to show different layers of intervention that has a higher reach, but also has high impact programming and is coupled in both. We hope that if this works with the 5 agencies, that we can look at new communities and new mentoring agencies, or how many ever number decide to join in. But if this works with those communities, that we can expand this to other communities throughout the state, and that those organizations have the opportunity to generate revenue. And that every year we listen to our mentoring agencies and they say, great, you've provided us with the core relationship building training. Now our communities want this. Now police officers want this. Now coaches want that. And we can be responsive and we can write grants to add enhanced trainings year after year so that mentoring agencies can go back to their initial partners that they trained and said, this year we're adding to that training by doing this. So I think it adds to the menu, it adds to the opportunities, and it trains that village and allows mentoring agencies to have the tools, and for us to create those efficiencies so we don't have 20 organizations in the state all researching this, all creating their own workshops, that if we're really listening to the mentoring agencies, they're telling us over time, now we want this, now we want that, and we're being responsive to that and allowing that efficiency to be created. Does that answer your question? It was a bit of a rambling there.
It does. I think the precursor that I have to the response that you gave is that, I mean, we haven't, there's certainly some alignment developing on the everyday mentoring. I mean, we haven't had a conversation of the five of us or within on the training component. I mean, and I know that there's certainly with quality mentoring, there's some there, but you know, I mean, we should start. I would think our training models even aligning towards a common product that's being delivered. And this is certainly a different product. However, it's going to be closely reflective of the voice that would come from the agency.
Yeah, it'll be hard to say how well this aligns with what you're already doing or how far off, but we're hoping that by budgeting 3 months, March, April, and May, just really dig in, that we'll be able to work with organizations to create something together. And it will be, you know, Mentor Out Colorado doing the legwork and then sending it back and saying, what do you think? And agencies providing input, and then us taking those recommendations, making changes, and then coming back again. But I'm hoping that, you know, by buffering in that time, it allows agencies to feel like they've contributed to it and created something that's going to work for them.
Mm-hmm. Is there a example where this has been launched nationally?
No, you know, I don't know any other state that, if it's happening in other states, it's the mentoring partnership. It's the Mentor Colorado version that's doing all the training. I've never heard of it going out and doing a train the trainer or pulling the resources together for mentoring agencies to do that. And I think that's always been the difference with Mentor Colorado and other states is we've tapped into the expertise of our mentoring programs, whereas I think in other states, they've always tried to position themselves as the expert. And I guess I really like that approach for Mentor Colorado, and I think it's because we were developed by people on the phone and by, you know, organizations throughout the state. So I haven't heard of that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Seth. So let's jump ahead to the 1 to 10. You know, I hate to put people on the spot, but I think it's important for us to know, Mentor Colorado, is this even worth having another conversation about? Should this be the last conversation we have? Or are people excited to move forward and try and see if we can pull this together so that's meaningful to you and meaningful to Mentor Colorado? So if we could just go around the virtual room and just say how excited, how likely are you to want to continue this conversation?
This is Tina. I'll go first. I really love the idea of exploring this further, and I'm ready for a new initiative. So let's march on.
Great. So I'm going to give you a 8.5. How's that work? 10 being the highest.
Thanks a lot.
What would you say? Or are you at 10?
Yeah, I think 8's good. 8's good. I'm in.
All right. Thanks.
Hello, this is Kirsten in Chaffey County, and I'm super excited. Just like Tina said, I'm excited for kids moving forward. I also love that it's all our rural community out here speaking up, trying to do more with less. And I'm totally rocking a 9 in excitement.
Okay, thanks, Kristen.
Hey, it's Lauren with Summon again. I'm really excited as well. I think I would go for a 9. The excitement is definitely there. It's just making sure that we have the bandwidth in the organization.
Yeah.
I'll follow up with Lauren.
Okay. Perfect.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't want to create like more work than we see for the people who are out there doing these trainings. I want to be realistic with the follow-up time frame after they put on these trainings and what evaluations we're doing. But I think it's great. I think it's going to make an amazing impact on the community and hopefully help our mentoring agencies recruit more mentors through the process. So I'll be a 9.
Great. And that's Robin, correct?
Yes, Robin.
Perfect. Thanks, Robin.
I would say I am at a 6-ish, and for the same response of excited on the opportunity that exists and the capacity to really expand the conversation within communities and expand the skill set and the training. Nervous on how it would fit in, particularly in that continued follow-up once the training happens. If people are not then slotting into the organization, into our organization, of how we could have the bandwidth to continue to provide support and be that person who's helping people navigate through, whether it's questions or engaging with other organizations and being that facilitator for them.
Yeah, great. And I think, there's a small percentage of Mentor Colorado that says we want to be able to provide that support and to have buffer in the staff person that could do those coaching calls and could provide that everyday mentoring support to each mentors. But I know too, a lot of mentoring agencies, if the people are in their communities, they want to be able to provide that support. So it's interesting to try and find what is that right balance. And I guess for us, we tried to find it by saying, we'll provide the materials and the videos and the messaging, and the coaching will come from the mentoring agency. But it'll be an interesting conversation for us to have and say, what is the best way to support, so it's not just a one and done training and we have no clue, what challenges people are having and how they're getting supported. And I know Michelle's written a message here. She had to drop off the call. She said, I am a 9 in excitement and 7.5 without the details on capacity issue. Yeah, so I think the question about excitement probably is, it seems like everybody's high, but actual implementation, can I make this work? That's a number now, a different number all in itself. And we're hoping that, if people are the ones making those decisions on the call, that we'll be able to find a way to make it work for everybody. And that because we're picking, I don't want to say similar organizations, because we're picking organizations in rural and frontier Colorado, that you might have more similarities that will allow us to make program decisions that will align with everyone. But I think we won't know until we get into those discussions, if that is the case. So what I was planning for next steps was to send out a doodle poll for a meeting to work out some of the logistics. And when we look at the grant timeline, so making it somewhere on that week of I think it's the 23rd, the week after Thanksgiving, sending out a doodle to find the time that'll work for everybody, and really digging in on some of the details and putting out some key questions there for people to respond to around numbers, around coaching and support. What could that look like, so that we can start to get a real sense of what the capacity would be needed in order for this program to work, and people can get a better sense if this is a good fit for you and that we should move forward. So I think, in that week, we'll obviously want to try and confirm people, but hopefully that conversation, I'm thinking about 90 minutes, will help people to get a better sense if this is a good fit. If you find in the next couple of weeks, I'll send out the doodle today, but if in the next couple of weeks you find that this isn't a good fit, and after thinking about it for a bit it wasn't, feel free to email Hannah and let her know. We don't want anyone jumping in if they don't think this is something that they want to pursue. But if you're, open to exploring further, and we had this with AmeriCorps, where I think we had 10 agencies who were initially involved in the conversation. And as the details got fleshed out on what was going to be involved in the AmeriCorps program, people slowly started dropping out. And I think the devil is in the details. And so we aren't expecting any MOUs or anything to be signed or commitment on this. But what I think would be great is if people are participating in the calls, active in the calls, we'll be able to understand if this will work for everyone involved. All right, so thank you everyone. I will send out a doodle. I will also send out this recording if you want to share it with anyone else at your organization. And we will, Mentor Colorado will keep chugging forward on this, and hopefully it'll be a good fit.
Great, thank you, Brad.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.